Good morning. Today we're gonna be learning how to properly or how to conjugate verbs in Spanish. We're gonna be using our critical thinking and we're gonna be using also our previous knowledge about Spanish on how to conjugate verbs. So the first thing we are gonna do is why do we need conjugations in Spanish? Why is it so important to conjugate properly in Spanish? So using our critical thinking, we're gonna take a minute and think, why is conjugations important? So in English, it's a little different in Spanish. So when we have verbs in English is I run, you run, she runs, they run, we run. It doesn't change. But in Spanish, as we know, everything has a gender and everything has to match in gender and it has to match in numbers. So we gotta think, if a verb ends, let's say it's a female verb or is referring to a female, we know that that verb is going to end on an A if it's singular and is going to end on an AS if it's plural. So now that we know, we think, what is the verb talking about? Is the verb talking about one person, is a female, is a male, and then we gotta think, is it singular or is it plural? Now that we know all, now that we have asked these questions and we have answered those questions, then we can think on how to properly conjugate in Spanish. In Spanish, there are three types of verbs. We have AR verbs, verbs that end on AR, ER verbs, verbs that end on ER, and we have IR verbs, verbs that end on IR. Each of these set of verbs have different rules and have a different table. On your desk, you're going to find a similar table like the one that I'm showing you here on the computer, on the screen. All right, so now we know that verbs are going to follow this set of rules that you see right here. I don't know if you can see them very well. Right there. So as you can see, it contains all the forms of conjugations. The yo form, tú form, él, ella form, nosotros form, vosotros form, and nosotros form. So as I explained before, when we are doing conjugations, we are thinking, what is the verb talking about? Who is the verb referring to? We have the 6 forms, right? We have 6 forms in Spanish. The yo form, which refers to myself in the first person. We have the tú form, which refers to you, the second person. Then we have the él, ella, usted form, which is the you form, but it's a little different because when you said él, ella, usted, you're talking to ella, meaning she, he, or you, but formal, because usted is another form of you in Spanish. Remember that we have 3 different forms of you in Spanish. We have the tú, we have the usted, and we have the vos. They all mean you, but one is formal and the other 2 are informal, depending on the region that you live at. So now that we know this though, then we can think of a verb. Let's say we think about the verb correr, to run. So now we have correr ends on ER. So if it ends on ER, it's going to follow this set of rules, as you see right here. So we are going to be using our critical thinking, and we know that correr is an ER verb, so we are gonna be replacing that ER is gonna be gone. So now, what do I replace that ER with? Now I gotta think. I gotta go look at the sentence and see, what is the sentence talking about? Is the sentence talking about me? Then if it's talking about me, we are going to be replacing that ER for an O. Yo corro. But what if the verb is talking about you? You run. See, I run, you run. So now that we know that it's talking about you, because we are looking at the sentence and it says, ella corre en las mañanas. So now we know that ella, it's female. So no, ella, it's female and it's the second person. So we are going to replace that ER for an ES. So ella or ellos corren. Now, the usted form. Ella corre, tú, but I'm sorry, I made a mistake. So the tú form, we change this for an es. So tú corres. So we're changing that er for an es. Tú corres, you run. Now we have él, ella, usted, which means he, she, or you. The formal version, not the tú, but the formal version of you. So then, if it says, Don Juan correr, Don Juan correr. So what do I substitute that er with? If we are looking at Don Juan, using our previous knowledge from Spanish, we know that Don Juan is referring to Mr. Juan. So if we have the word Mr. in a sentence, we know that that sentence is going to be formal. Therefore, it's going to be using the usted form rather than the tú. So then we are gonna be replacing that er with an e instead of an o, instead of an es, because it's not talking about the tú form of you, which is the informal version. It's talking about Don Juan, which is the formal version of you. So we're gonna be replacing that er for an e. Don Juan corre. Why? Because it's formal, and with our previous knowledge of Spanish, now we understand and we know that that sentence is going to be formal. Therefore, we have to use an e, following the rule, because we always have to think, what are the rules? Okay, the rule is if it's formal, we replace that er with an e. How do I know it's formal? We have to look at our sentence and we have to see who the sentence is referring to. So if we see Don Juan, we think, okay, Don Juan is a formal, it's Mr. Juan. But what if it says Melissa, my friend Melissa runs. Then my friend Melissa is not going to use a formal setting of conversation because you are friends. Then you're going to say Melissa corre instead of Melissa tú corres instead of Melissa ella corre, because that will be formal. And then we have three more forms. We have the ustedes form, we have the vosotros form, and the él, ellos form. So let's start with él, ellos form. The same thing. We have that er, we have the same verb. Let's switch it to comer, to eat. Yo como, because we're switching that er for an o for the yo. Tú comes. Él, ella come. Nosotros, we. If it says nosotros anywhere on the sentence, we know that it's talking about we, us. So if we said, let's say for the example, the sentence says, nosotros comer ayer. Nosotros comer ayer. So nosotros is talking about us as a group of people that includes you. Therefore, we're gonna replace that er for hemos, E-M-O-S. So nosotros ayer comimos. If we have nosotros comer ayer, nosotros ayer comimos, or comimos ayer. All right, and then we have the vosotros form. As we know, the vosotros form is a very rare form of Spanish. It's an old Spanish, only now used in Spain. We don't use it in Latin America anymore, but for matters of this class, we have to learn it, but we don't use it in Latin America. It's only used in Spain. So, vosotros form is going to replace that AR, ER, or IR for an ACE. ACE, and it's important to know this because when we use ACE, we have to put an accent mark on the E. So we're replacing that ER with an EIS, but the E that is replacing the ER has an accent mark. It's very important to put the accent mark, otherwise the word is grammatically incorrect. So you have to always use accent marks and know where the accent mark goes. So we know that it has the vosotros anywhere, or let's say we are looking at for instance, let's say we are looking at a paper or at an essay from someone from Galicia or from Madrid, Barcelona. Then we know if that paper is coming from Spain, we know that the form in the whole essay or in the whole paper is going to be vosotros because it's Spain. Therefore, thinking if it's in Spain and if it's the you guys form, it's not gonna be the ustedes form because we know that the paper comes from Spain or from somewhere in Spain, like University of Spain or University of Madrid, University of Barcelona. Any research paper or any article that is made in Spain is going to be the vosotros form. So when talking about you guys, we see you guys. So what are we going to use? Are we going to use the ustedes form, which means you guys, or are we going to use the vosotros form, which also means you guys? With the information that we have that document came from University of Madrid, then we can think and say, okay, so if the paper comes from Madrid, it's gonna be under the vosotros form. Therefore, when we are conjugating you guys, we are not gonna use the ustedes form, we're going to use the vosotros form. So we're going to say vosotros coméis rather than ustedes comen, which will be the ustedes form, which is the last form that we're gonna be looking at today, which is the ustedes form. The ustedes form is going to replace that ER for an EN. Ustedes comen, ustedes corren. And the vosotros form, which also means you guys, but in Spain, we use vosotros corréis or vosotros coméis. Then we always have to be thinking where is the paper coming from or what is the audience that the author of that paper is referring to so we know how to properly conjugate. And we do the same thing for AR and ER and IR verbs. We are always going to replace the ending of verbs. As we know, verbs in Spanish end on AR, ER, or IR. So what we do when conjugating is the first thing that we gotta think is this is a verb, this is an AR verb, so we know that what we do for conjugation is replace the ending, replace that AR, that ER, or the IR for the appropriate ending according to the rule, according to the table that you guys have already on your notes that I gave you last week. So using those notes and using your critical thinking, using the facts and the information that I have provided for you, you gotta think this is a verb in the present tense, is an AR verb, and it's talking about the yo form. Now that we know that information and that we have all those facts here, we know that we are going to be replacing that AR for a no. Why? Because it's in the first person, it's the yo form, and it's in the present. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you.